welcome to Feedstuffs 365 and National Hog Farmer. I'm Ann Hess. The National Pork Board has been working with retailers to unlock their share of an $80 million opportunity with more ground pork options in store. But there's more impact to this than consumer choice. Aligning with the Taste What Pork Can Do consumer campaign, ground pork is a convenient protein option for both millennial and Gen Z consumers. Joining us to talk about the value of ground pork and how the National Pork Board and state pork associations are working with retailers is Sarah Showalter, Director of Consumer and Business Insights for the Pork Board, and Will Brunt, Chief Innovation and Marketing Officer for Villari Food Group, and also a member of the National Pork Board's Marketing Advisory Group. Welcome to you both, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Before we jump into today's discussion, I'd like to remind the audience tuning in, you can post your questions at any time in the chat, or if you're tuning in via social media, please post those there in the comments. Well, let's kick off this conversation here today by having you each introduce yourself and your role and maybe even share your favorite ground pork dish. Sarah, let's start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Ann. Hi, my name is Sarah Showalter. I'm the Director of Business and Consumer Insights at National Pork Board, and I am a part of our business intelligence team. So what that means is I work with a team to help provide a 360-degree view into the consumer. That's not only about understanding what trends have happened in the past, but also trying to anticipate what will happen in the future by really getting at what's in the hearts and minds of consumers and what they're thinking and feeling. And so we take that information and try to identify opportunities around where we can meet them where they are. And so ultimately we take all those insights and then provide strategic guidance on opportunities for pork. My favorite ground pork dish is egg roll in a bowl. I am a mom of 3 teenagers, and I'm always looking for easy weeknight meals. And ground pork really delivers on convenience, flavor, and nutrition. And it's definitely something that is a go-to in my household.
Very good. Will?
Hi, my name is Will Brunt. Good afternoon. I'm the Chief Marketing and Innovation Officer at the Villari Food Group. And similar to Sarah in that role from a marketing perspective, we're looking to find unmet consumer needs with the consumers and trying to address those needs. From an innovation standpoint, I get to link that to product development, to product improvements, to product enhancements that address those needs as well, and then get involved in strategic selling, which is trying to take those products and drive them into the food service and retail channels. And my favorite pork dish is a smashed taco, a pork smashed taco.
Well, I was gonna say that's very fitting, today's Cinco de Mayo, and I didn't even realize until I was shooing everyone out the door and they're saying what's for supper, and I'm making taco soup with ground pork. So we're celebrating, Will, and enjoying ground pork at the same time.
Awesome.
So Sarah, let's jump in the conversation here about the value proposition for ground pork. Describe that for us.
Yeah, so we started on this journey with ground pork about 6 years ago, and it really started with data and insights. Our research identified that ground pork was an opportunity, and not only did we see it was an opportunity, but we saw it was an $80 million opportunity in incremental sales for the industry. When we looked at the research, we looked at how consumers were shopping, what they were looking for, and we saw that there was a really great opportunity with ground pork because it is such a versatile protein. For consumers, it really delivers against convenience, flavor, and it's nutritious. And when we were looking at the insights, we found that it was relevant across the generations, but it was especially strong for those younger consumers, the Gen Z and the millennials, that we know are critical to the long-term health of the pork category. As we were digging into the insights and thinking about the value proposition, we look at really just how versatile ground pork is. It really can play a role as the main course if you think about things like burgers or meatloaf, but it also can be an ingredient in dishes like chili or pasta sauce or some of those global cuisines like tacos or egg rolls. And we know that those global cuisines are things that those younger consumers are looking for. And it's really delivering against the needs and meeting them where they are.
So, Will, how does ground pork align with the Taste What Pork Can Do campaign?
I think out of all the different pork products, I think ground pork is probably the most highly aligned with taste what pork can do. Not only does ground pork have a great flavor profile in and of itself, but it works so well with so many different flavor profiles, so many different cuisines that it really, as far as what it can do, it is really the most adept of all the pork products. It can do the most. It's the most versatile. And I think to what Sarah was talking about with the millennials who are experimenting in global cuisines, who are looking at pork as an ingredient as much as the center of the plate entree, I think ground pork is ultimately positioned for taste what pork can do and has the
Sarah,
most upside. It's the most underdeveloped of all the pork products. I think there's the most upside. I think that $80 million could be a lot larger number.
absolutely. Sarah, anything to add here?
Yeah, as I look at the Taste What Pork Can Do consumer brand campaign, we know it's all about engaging those younger consumers using digital media tools. And, as we look across the product portfolio, there's a huge opportunity with ground pork. We also are seeing that through the numbers. So we've seen that Gen Z shoppers are spending more dollars per trip on ground pork than any other generation. And they're also buying it more often. So there's fewer days between the purchases of ground pork. And so that really gets to us getting more people eating more pork more often. And this product is delivering against that. We also see that I think there's even more opportunity ahead. So millennial and Gen Z shoppers are spending more per year on ground meat. They're spending $5 more on average per total shoppers. And so I think getting additional ground pork SKUs and making sure that consumers are aware of the product is a really great opportunity to further engage younger consumers in the future with the fresh pork portfolio.
I'm sure we'll get into this more as the conversation goes on, but I imagine, maybe they're grabbing that ground pork a little bit faster now that it's quite often positioned right next to the ground beef or the ground turkey, and so they see that as an alternative there. Um, Sarah, what does the National Pork Board have to do with this data, this strategy for ground pork?
Yeah, so NPB's approach to market growth is really taking insights into execution. And we've built that approach with our retail partners in mind. So, National Pork Board and state pork associations are coordinating with our retail partners, and we're really wanting to help them understand the value of ground pork. What that looks like is one-to-one connections with our retail partners. It could be introducing them to the third-party research that we have available, or providing support on their efforts, or making sure that they have access to our advertising or promotion resources. Our market growth team is structured in a way that we're meeting the needs at every step in the supply chain, but ultimately we're wanting to enable our retail partners across the US to make sure that they have the tools needed to unlock that growth potential by expanding their grind set.
Will, any additional comments here as a member of the National Pork Board's marketing advisory group?
I think Sarah alluded to it when she talked about aligning across the supply chain. I think one thing that one of many things the Pork Board has done really well with ground and with the Taste What Pork Can Do campaign in totality is aligning every single phase of the supply chain, whether it's the producer, the processor, the distributor, the broker, the retailer, the state association, the food service operator, aligning messaging and aligning the data and getting everybody across that supply chain to understand the opportunity, the growth potential, the value proposition of the product. And that I think is what's had so much success. And Sarah alluded to it. This process really started in 2001. And then you referenced pork, ground pork being slotted next to competitive grinds to kind of drag it into really kind of drag ground pork into the conversation by having it next to products that it could be a substitute for. And that research was done in 2021 and utilized by many to start that process. So I think, just helping everybody work this opportunity through the entire supply chain has been incredibly successful and incredibly powerful and having the results as you see what's happening in ground pork today in the marketplace.
Yeah, I know we've had that discussion before here and talked about a lot of those success stories with ground pork. Obviously, much more work to do there as well, especially with some of these younger groups. I'd like to remind the audience, if you're tuning in, if you have any questions for Will or Sarah, you can post those there in the chat, or if you're tuning in via social media, you can post those there in the comments. So, as we wrap up our discussion here today, any key takeaways, final thoughts to leave our audience with today? Will, I'll start with you.
Um, I think ground pork is so important to the complex. If you think about how much trim comes off of a hog, it's 18 to 25%, which is equivalent to the loin complex when you really think about it. And it's that important to the economics of our industry. So I think leaning into this and driving ground pork is fundamental to the success of the industry. And I applaud the pork board for taking this on and appreciate what they're doing to drive this and the success they're having in it. Because I think Sarah alluded to the $80 million opportunity at retail. I think the implications for the industry are probably greater than that when you think back through the supply chain. So I think we need to, we're leaning into it. We need to continue to lead into it. And I think there are even more and greater opportunities for it as we educate the end consumer on the opportunities and the versatility and the utility of ground pork.
Sarah?
Yeah, thanks, Ann. I'm going to build on what Will said because I think I agree. I mean, I think this ground pork opportunity has really been a journey that we've been on for a while, but the industry is continuing to build momentum. And I think there is a meaningful opportunity right ahead of us to continue to lean into these consumer trends and really provide consumers what they're looking for. If we look at what consumers are looking for today, it's delivering that flavor, convenient, something that's nutritious, and ground pork checks all those boxes. And also importantly, as I mentioned, I think it engages that younger generation, which is also where we're focused with the Taste What Pork Can Do consumer brand campaign. So I personally am really excited to see how this continues to build, to drive demand, and ultimately add value to our producers.
Well, we appreciate both of you joining us and sharing those success stories so far. And we look forward to continuing this conversation. I hope we're still talking ground pork in 5, 10 years and how much of a splash it's made. Sarah Showalter and Will Brunt, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insight.
Thank you for having us.
For you and our audience, we thank you for tuning in today. For more coverage and conversations on pork industry related topics, be sure to check out the Feedstuffs and National Hog Farmer websites, as well as our social media channels. For Feedstuffs and National Hog Farmer, I'm Ann Hess.